Hello, this is Dave Dubois, state climatologist for New Mexico, and I'm just going to talk to you about a project that we've been doing over the last couple of years. It's the National Air Quality and Agricultural Assessment, and the original project was actually for the whole country. And this case, we're going to just focus in on the Southwest and Southern Great Plains. So I just want to start off with just a short kind of a briefing on the trends of PM25 and ozone and across the region, and just showing you the time series of concentrations, annual average concentrations of PM25 over different regions. In general, we've seen an improvement in the last 20 years. So the graphs go from 2000 to 2019. These are off of the Air Trends EPA website. However, on a specific areas that they're actually not all decreasing at the same rate, and in a few locations there's actually some increases because of extreme events in both PM25 and ozone. And another reason for some of the variations in a year-to-year basis is from weather. So, for instance, drought. Just a map. This graph here shows the U.S. drought monitor percent of the western U.S. in terms of the categories of the U.S. drought monitor from pre-drought D0 all the way from D1 through D4, and that's what the coloring is the percent of area and the different drought categories. You can see the ebb and flow of drought come and go, and a lot of what air quality is actually modulated by the weather in terms of the temperatures as well as the soil conditions, the dryness. So more wind erosion when we get drought. Higher temperatures is a lot of times associated with higher ozone. So a lot of some of the trends can be resolved from there. But we need to also look at the impacts of other sources. For instance, I'm just going to show just a few examples here. Wind erosion, as well as looking at specific sources using the role of satellite imagery to look at different the impacts of one fallow field compared to the other areas when we have the high wind cases. And then we also looked at animal production. So everything from small animal feeding operations to the larger ones that are more than 1,000 animal units. And then we looked at the pollutants, particulate matter, PM2.5, PM10, as well as the gases, ammonia, H2S, and methane for different animal areas, dairies, poultry, as well as range production and other animals. And then we also, some of the papers that we reviewed kind of looked at seasonal emissions. And one of the gaps in the research we found was not a lot of, or very, very, very little was on pecans, for instance. And that's what this picture here shows. So it's basically just a once in a year event where they harvest the pecans using harvesters, and they scrape the pecans off the ground, creating dust. So these are acute exposures. So during the year, very little air emissions from particulate matter, but then one day when there's harvesting, there's a lot, and it's very similar for the other production, such as like getting ready to plant, so tilling the land, things like that. So those are some of the topics that we covered under the synthesis. And so this kind of shows you by the types of papers, and we on the left side shows you that we categorize them by the agriculture impacts on air pollution. So we cataloged 285 papers, and the majority of those were focusing on particulate matter. 31% were PM25 and 25% PM10. Then we also cataloged them according to the other direction. So the impacts of pollution on agriculture, and a lot of the papers out of the 231 that were cataloged in that type were focusing on ozone. So how does ozone impact crop production, mainly yield of different crops? And the other ones were particulate matter, PM25, 10% of the papers, and then PM10 were 11% of the papers. And we also looked at a different viewpoint. So where was the research conducted? So if we look at this map shown here is the number of articles published that are focusing on addressing the impacts of agriculture on air quality. A lot of the papers, you can see the from Washington State, California, all the way to southern states, majority of the papers. And then we looked at the other side is where was the research conducted that focusing on impacts of pollution on agriculture. So a lot of still some of the other southern states pop up, but there's a few other areas. There's not a lot of research has been done. So this is kind of just a different viewpoint on synthesizing where is research done. So a lot of other work was done on the synthesis, looking at by crop, different by pollutants, and then some of the implications for research. So we'll probably get the paper published very soon. And here's my contact information.